Great. So if you don't know me yet, my name is Adria and happy to meet you. I'm a conscious channel of Angels Ariel and Raphael. So they'll let you know when they're speaking. Sometimes I chime in. And this monthly angel update is really a chance for the angels to share how we can best understand and navigate what's going on right now for humankind on Earth. So it's a pretty wide topic, so we'll see what comes through today. The energy feels very strong, a little more forceful than soft, so we'll see what the message is today. This is Angel Ariel. So we speak to you today about massive change for humankind. We began a bit this week to sow the seeds of this message, but it is like the geode or egg or shell has cracked open. So what is inside is quite magnificent, and yet you may be feeling a bit tender, particularly if you think of an egg. And let's say that the egg was ready to hatch and it's not a violence or a terrible spill. So the cracking open now means you find yourself in a wildly different environment. If you thought of yourself as the crystals inside the geode suddenly touched with sunlight for the first time, or a baby chick tasting air for the first time, and perhaps not so much warmth as when the chick was sat upon. But here we have this sense of shock and suddenness of the cracking open, even though for any of these life forms, and certainly for humankind, this change has been long time coming. And so the incubation is complete. It's not a suddenness that is incorrect or out of place or out of time. And yet it is quite a sense of having cracked in half and been laid bare to new elements. So let's try to weave this analogy a little more closely to what you might understand in your own life, because you're not a geode or a baby chick. What is it like to feel cracked open? What it feels like is the protective covering is not there. So whatever you are sensitive to, whether it is loss or joy or illness or the moods of others, you might feel that you are missing your shell between yourself and those things, and it feels sudden. So even if you were sensitive before, all of a sudden it feels very different, like those crystals hitting the sunlight for the first time. They might have felt the warmth of it before, but it's quite different when it's direct, right? Direct hit. So the good news is this means that also your inner powers, so to speak, are unleashed. They're no longer having to move through a barrier coating of any kind either. So when you are amplifying your own light now, whether it's a healing gift or words or messages you're putting out, they're going to reach much farther, much easier, and be easier for someone to understand. If conceptually you had a closed geode and you walked up to someone and you said, this is so beautiful, they might say, so you want me to believe that that's so beautiful? I mean, it's a ugly rock, right? It looks kind of like cement or something around there. And you say, no, it's so beautiful. I know, I've seen it, And well, now they're not taking your word for it anymore. That beauty that is the interior space in everyone, so not just you, but in everyone, is suddenly shining to be seen, to be heard, and so on. So it's not all visual, of course, but that's the metaphor today. So you are now on display. Your beauty, your brilliance, your gifts. You're not going to have to translate so much for people this is the beauty of me. Let me give you the sales copy. If you only were sensitive enough, you could see that inside of me is this beautiful, whatever it is, right? They're going to see it. It's going to be very direct, or palpably feel it, or feel the effects in themselves. So those of you who are subtle with your gifts and have been struggling with feeling like people wanted you to be a hammer when you're a wildflower, you're going to notice more appreciation, more respect for your gifts, for what you do, for what you are, who you are, and how you blossom in the world quite naturally. So you're paradoxically, even though there is this vulnerable feeling of exposure, there also is this feeling of, at last, the subtlety of me can be seen. I can be seen for who and what I am without having to shine a light on it, amplify it so much in a forced way. So if you look at those tiny, tiny wildflowers in a field, have the sun on them, they're so lovely as they are. They don't need to be magnified. They don't need to be pressed or painted or somehow made different than what they are to be brilliant and to be admired. So whether your gifts are quite forceful or quite subtle, they're going to be more apparent to others now. So the other change inherent in this, part of this same moment of the cracking open, is interdimensional ease of transit. So we've begun to work in the small groups already with interdimensional travel. So some of you have experienced this. But again, if you are walking through, let's say, air instead of rock, it's easier, right? It is possible to walk through rock, but it takes some more strength of belief system or tools to drill through something like this. So interdimensionally, there is such an ease now. You're going to find much more visitations from other realms that are more apparent. Perhaps they've been visiting already and you felt a little something or saw a little glimmer, but now it's more palpably a shape or a voice. And you yourself are going to start transiting to enjoy these other realms, meaning other dimensions that are now so much more widely available to humankind. So without needing passport or certain documents or certain funds, you now have this ability to travel immensely wide. And here we're not talking at the moment about interstellar travel, but where you are on Earth, piercing through those different dimensions as if you were moving through air. It becomes quite simple. And the genetic makeup of you, many beings have been speaking of, part of new Earth, new age is new human, right? And the new human is the transformation of the cellular and DNA structures. And that wasn't just to put you through sorrow and, sleepless nights and bloating and so on. It also was because the new genetics, the new DNA, know how to walk through the dimensions. So with your intent, you just go there. Now you don't need so much of the special guidance teams to get through those dense barriers between dimensional realities. So those of you who have had vivid dream space or meditations or astral travel have experienced something like this, where you're quite aware you're in a different place and yet you're still you. The difference is now you will have your body suit with you as you travel through these dimensions. So we're not speaking about necessarily closing the eyes, although you may. We're speaking about eyes open, sitting on your chair, moving through different dimensional realities that are available right where you are on your slice of earth, so to speak, like a many-layered cake. So you transit between these layers, see or hear or touch or feel what are the different kind of frequencies and beings in those places. And if you like, to start friendly dialogue and interchange. So let's think of it right now as a time of tourism. In other words, not the ugly kind or polluting kind, but that it's about friendly exchange and curiosity. It's not so much about purpose. So, in other words, you're not there to conquer some evil in some other land, and you're not there to take over, certainly, and you're not there to transform yourself even necessarily, because you are already in this process of massive transformation. So it is not a quest in the old sense of either battle or you must go to these different dimensions in order to obtain some new power or skill or object. It is more about noticing that your world just became vastly huge compared to what it was last hour, last week, last month. So this change has happened within the last 3 months, but something happened last week, which was a sort of final cracking open of the egg. So you may have felt some very rocky days, physically or emotionally, because it doesn't necessarily feel so great while you're splitting open. But we would say from angelic standpoint, this is very positive to be able to share your gifts and to be able to transit between the different dimensional layers with ease, Is there a downside? This is Angel Raphael. You may need to get used to living without a protective layer. Now, let's stay with this image of the geode instead of the baby chick for a moment, because the crystals inside the geode don't really need protection. They're quite hard, right? You have to try pretty hard to damage them if you had that wish. So the rain, the sun, the little bird hopping by or on the geode itself is not going to damage those crystals, right? So although they are lovely and rare and transformative to other beings, they are not vulnerable, even though it feels that way without the shell. Similarly, you don't really need that, let's say, dulling layer between you and the dimensions and you and other beings in your own dimensional reality. But you have become accustomed to it. So there may be a period where you feel a little more raw, but just notice in those moments, am I really being harmed right now? Or am I just experiencing things in a much more direct way? So there's a difference between a hammer coming down on the crystal of the geode and the sunlight and the rain. So there can be new sensation, there can be new sight, sounds, touch. You may feel other people's emotions if you did not before. Telepathy becomes accidental, we'd say. In other words, frequent, even if you're not efforting at it so much. So it is an adjustment that things are so open, but we don't see that you need to put up a new layer to protect yourself. We would suggest you at least notice, ask yourself the questions in these moments. Am I actually being harmed by this, or is it just so much sensation that I'm not used to? And was my new being, the enhanced humanity of me, is it in fact resilient to this increased sensation? And am I ready to share what I am with the world? Have I in fact been waiting for this for some long while? So that is our message for today. And yes, if you have noticed with this channel, we do not get very technical with our description of things. So you may have heard certain words or concepts about what is going on now. Yes, many of them may be true. We like to describe things in a way that the human mind, the daily experience can relate to, because this is very practical. It's happening in your waking and dreaming life. It's happening in terms of sharing your gifts with humankind, and it's happening with your experience of the world. So, yes, we'll pause for questions. This is Adria. If you have questions, please type them in the chat. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'll just pause for a moment, have some water. Great, thank you. First question is, does this hatching also mean that projects that we worked on for a while can come to fruition now? It may and it may not. This is Raphael. It's not necessarily that straightforward as to say the stew is now done. It's been cooking for some time and it's now ready. Because in you, for example, that project has been ripe within you and you're waiting for the ripeness of some other beings to join with you. So more generally, we would say here that what cracked open, which gifts, which portion of yourself is now so valid, quote unquote, valid from the standpoint of others. In other words, they can discern it in you more easily. May surprise you. It may not be the few projects or gifts you have been identifying yourself with or striving for. So be a little open to that too. What are other people noticing in you now? Is it different? Is it what I've been trying to tell them I was all this time? Or is it something perhaps even a little new to yourself to know about? It's not that you then have to ditch those projects you've been working on steadily, but allow room for some surprises here. So it is not necessarily in that sense the incubation, ready to hatch into the world, because the timing now will choose another topic related to this question. Third dimensional time had a linear aspect to it, where it felt like projects needed a certain amount of maturity and effort before they were ready to be shared. Now, sometimes things happen instantly when you conceive of them, and sometimes there seems to be a lag, and it's not that more effort is required of you or more planning in a linear sense, but it may be that there are others, either the recipients, or those who want to co-create, play with you in this, are in the synergy of their own timing, are not quite ready to match up with you. So in your case, from the question here, that's what's going on, is you're ready, you've done all you need to quote unquote do here, but there are others coming to play. They have a few things on their agendas first. They are still ripening into meeting you in terms of synergy. Next question. Oh, this is great. This question came in before Raphael started talking. We'll see if there's more on this. Time, playing with time as opposed to being a slave of time. Can you talk about that? This is Angel Raphael. Yes, so again, in third dimensional reality, which almost none of you are playing in that field very much at all anymore. In third dimensional reality, which is where most of you or all of you grew up, there was very strict rules around timing and maturation of things, and even your own timeline as a soul, what you had, the goal posts or the ages you had set, this will happen around this time in my life, they were very strict in third dimension. In most other dimensions, not all, but most other dimensions, time is more fluid. And so it's a little bit more like being in water than on a scaffolding structure, right? Scaffolding structure doesn't have give. You don't want it to, because that's a security, safety, right? And one of the main points of vulnerability as you've moved into fifth and other dimensions in this last few years is that it doesn't feel like you have that scaffolding to hold on to, of that linear sense of predictability and horizon. So that's the downside of losing the structure of time. The upside is you have this fluidity. So let's say if you wanted a house and you know you wanted a new house, in third dimension, that would mean you could plan out to the day, let's say, even accounting for construction delays, about what month it would be finished, how much it would cost, how long it would take to get there, what are the steps involved, how many people do you need to hire. Now, if you conceive of a house and you want it to be new, that same three-dimensional planning may still be open, but it's more likely that what will happen is someone else just finished building a house and they suddenly didn't want it anymore, so it's open for you to buy, or in some other way things were faster or sometimes slower than you expected. But there's this fluidity and unpredictable nature with time. And you also have that ability, like a breeze blowing a wildflower, to pull time back and forth. So this is how we suggest playing with it first to get a sense of how this works. Let's say you have 2 or 4 hours in the afternoon to clean your house and some other projects you wanted to do, and you're feeling that it's not enough time. So you just have this intent or prayer. Okay, I'd like time to expand to fit all of these activities. So at the end of this same span of time, 2 or 4 hours, all of this is complete now. And the other way around, if you have to be sitting somewhere in a meeting for an hour and you feel it's excruciatingly long, you ask for time, the experience of time to compress so the meeting can be done already. Something like that. You can play with, that's not messing with anyone else or their experience, but you can get that sense of how time is now fluid and you are its master. And so it's not, you can't count on it like a scaffolding anymore, but you also can bend it. And when you are wishing for things, planning for things like a house, it's good to let the time be flexible, open. So just unclench your gut around that a little bit. Well, what is the timing? What is the timing for others and myself that's just wonderful about this? Because when you relax that sense that this needs to take a year and a half, you can allow that it might be 2 weeks, or you can allow that it might be 3 years. But more often it's faster these days because of the fluidity, and you generally don't want to wait when you want something right now. But that's how you can begin to play with time. Beautiful. This is Adria. So I don't see any more questions, and I am hearing they're ready to close. The angels are ready to close. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining, and those who are watching later. Hello, welcome, and so much love to all of you. Angel updates will continue, as far as I know, every month on this same schedule, and feel free to visit my website for other recordings of angels. I have a new book out, which is on Amazon, Angel Insights for Unprecedented Times, which speaks a lot about New Earth. And we're also doing angel workshops, at least one a week these days, so you can check out the calendar for that. So much love to all of you.